Let's get to the bigger picture now. And global markets have bounced, of course, from the heavy losses we saw at the beginning of the week as fears of a slowdown in China abate for the time being. Different story though in the FX markets. The euro is crumbling as Russia, I should say, cut natural gas to Bulgaria and Poland as tensions between the Kremlin and West continue to go and simmer. Take us through all the moves in currency land. Nick Twidale from FP Markets joining us here live in the studio. Nick, can we go and start off with the Japanese yen today, because we do have the Bank of Japan. Not expected to go and do anything, but the movements in the Japanese yen have been wild over the past few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's been huge, isn't it? It's probably been the trade of the year so far. That break above 116, taking us all the way up to nearly 130, it's been relentless. There's almost been no pullback. And to be honest, we're probably just going to get confirmation of more of the same from the BOJ today. I think we've just seen some fixing to the top side as well in the last sort of 20 minutes, half hour, and we're back at sort of daily highs, and it's probably going to go higher.
Well, they're a bit stuck, aren't they? Because you can't have yield curve control and worry about your currency. What could pop first? I mean, what are the traders talking about?
I think there's no real expectation that we're going to see the BOJ come in and really attack the currency. Even though we've seen a really big move, it's actually been relatively orderly. It's just been one-way traffic. I suppose if we start to see real volatility and real sharp moves, then there could be a change of stance. But to be honest, it's probably going to be more of the same. And I think the poor old BOJ, their rock and their hard places are just getting bigger and bigger, aren't they?
Poor old BOJ. Let's move across to the poor old ECB. Inflation is not quite out of control, but it's getting there. Everyone's talking about the potential for stagflation, a recession, and the like, and having to go and normalise policy settings doesn't seem like a pretty good mix. And then you're throwing what's going on with the energy crisis there. Where does it go? I don't see any going anywhere but parity against the greenback. Is that a view you share?
I tend to agree. I've heard some of the bigger guys that are saying it's going to struggle to get down there, but we're only 500 points away, and I don't think there's any real good reason for it not to go down to parity and through. And that's probably just a shorter, medium-term view, to be honest. It's longer term. I think we could be seeing it sitting comfortably in the 90s for the next year or two. Really, it's once you said that's a perfect storm for a lower euro.
Isn't it been managed quite well though? Because as we know, Lagarde tried her best to be dovish, to keep that euro down. All the Bundesbank and all the members are coming out with hawkish, and yet we still have a weak euro. That must be a sweet spot though. I
think it is a bit of a sweet spot, and I suppose we've got to look at the other side of the equation, as we always do, which is the dollar. Yes, there's a sort of they're just not hawkish enough for the currency, for any currency bull out there at the moment, and the Fed still are. So we're going to see it. It's a sell-on rallies at the very least, and I don't think there's too many levels to break as we move lower. 103.40 is the next level on the downside, and then I think we hit parity.
I was going to say, we haven't talked about the BOE for ages. We've been so focused on the Fed and RBA and everything else. What's the BOE up to? They've hiked a few times. What's happening now? They're pausing?
Well, I think there's a bit of a pause there. I think there's a little bit of a sit back and see what happens. And it's obviously we've got that geopolitical situation just across the channel in Europe, and to a certain extent, I think there's a little bit of a thought that Brexit's helped a bit with regard to. Maybe not in the major markets, but in the political side of things over in the UK. And I think the Bank of England has got one of the few central banks that can sort of pull back, maybe just for a few months, and see where data comes in and then react accordingly. Cable, of course, when you look at in a currency terms, that's getting hit as hard as euro at the moment as well. So we've moved very quickly down to sort of the 125s. Once again, I think when we look at the currency, it's probably going lower against the dollar. It has perked up against on the crosses on a few of the different against the other majors. But with regard to the Bank of England, I think we're going to see them sort of holding steady just for the next few sessions.
And then there's the Aussie dollar. Where do we go? Because commodity prices are still very elevated at the moment. We've got a lot priced into the curve, but then our major trading partner is locking down hundreds of millions of people as we speak. How do you trade that?
Can't be good, can it, when our major trading partner is locking down, as you say, hundreds of millions? I think it's a sell-on rally again. I think we could be hitting a perfect. If we do start to see a hit on commodities, and obviously with China, sort of, if they're locking up cities by the
Entire
score,
cities,
then we are going to get a reduction in demand. That will affect the Aussie, and I think that's the move we've seen over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I think there's probably further to go for us as well. And you take in, against the dollar, of course, we take in this sort of very hawkish Fed. The RBA, once again, can't quite equate them with the ECB, but we're nowhere near as hawkish as the Fed. You've got to watch that commodity space. I think that's the major side of it. And to watch that commodity space, you've got to watch what's happening in China. If we see a turnaround in China, I think we're going to see some support for the Aussie. If things get worse, then the Aussie could take a bit of a fast tumble.
So sub 70 is a headline away?
I think so, yeah. I don't think it's too bad. It feels very, very heavy just in today's trading, and I think we're not going to see that change until there is a dramatic turnaround in China.